Okay, why don't we get started? I want to welcome everyone to the January 2025 ACES Quarterly. And it is about hope. Our hope makes us lean into a future we cannot see. So we hope that you enjoy this presentation. Hope is an incredible thing. And we are going to have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you could hold your questions, that would be helpful. And also we'll be sending a survey at the end and would appreciate if you could take a little time to fill it out. The last thing is asking you to keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking. This presentation is brought to you today by the Trauma and Resilience team at the Snohomish County Health Department. I'm Sue Starr, and I'm a public health nurse.
And my name is Melinda Lozovoy. I'm also a public health nurse at the Snohomish County Health Department. And one of the programs I work in is the Trauma and Resilience team. We also have Emily Greenleaf. She is a behavioral health specialist, but she's not able to present with us today. Thanks for joining us. So this is the agenda for today's ACES Quarterly. We'll kick off with a check-in question. We'll go over some definitions of hope. We'll touch on the experience, measurement, and cultivation of hope. We'll share some characteristics of the hopeful, as well as the research of hope and its importance. And then we'll also view together a TED Talk by Chan Hellman about hope, and then have time for reflection and final thoughts.
Okay. Hope is one of the strongest emotions that has kept humans going since the dawn of time. So now we're going to take a few moments to hear from the group what hope means to you, to each of you. So please type in the chat or unmute and just let us hear what hope means to you.
I think of optimism and joy.
An unseen destination that allows us to, whoops, I missed the rest of that. Did you catch all of that, Melinda?
Yeah, I heard Jessica say optimism and joy. Anne says an unseen destination that allows us to keep going. Mackenzie says hope means something to look forward to. Rachel says the possibility that things can get better. Let's see. Yalitza said future, change, optimist. Gift said looking forward to something positive in the future or experiencing something positive right now. And Kenny says faith.
Very good.
Thank you all for sharing.
I love, those are all awesome. Great. Thank you.
And Ashley said a fighting chance. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts on what hope means. There are multiple definitions of hope. Here we have some definitions of hope, which include hope is a feeling of expectation and a desire for a certain thing to happen. Hope isn't a denial of what is, but a belief that the current situation is not all that can be. Hope is the belief that your future will be better than today and that you have the power to make it so. Hope is a desire accompanied by expectation or belief in fulfillment. It involves optimism, motivation, and strategy. Here we have a quote from the Iowa caucus victory speech in 2008 that says, "Hope is that thing inside us that insists, despite all the evidence to the contrary, that something better awaits us if we have the courage to reach for it and to work for it and to fight for it."
So when do we experience hope? We experience hope when we can set realistic goals, We can figure out how to achieve these goals, including the ability to stay flexible and develop alternative pathways. And then the next thing is we have agency or belief in ourselves. We have willpower. So the formula for experiencing hope involves the ability to problem solve and keep problem solving if necessary, and the willpower or perseverance or agency. So we actually know how to measure hope. This is a lot of stuff on the slide, but this is a adult hope scale, and it measures hope in adults. They also have one for children. The scale contains 12 items with participants responding on an 8-point scale. So anything from definitely false to definitely true, all those in between. The section at the bottom of the scale tells you how to score the scale. To obtain the score for the part that involves willpower or perseverance, you add items 2, 9, 10, and 12. And to obtain the score that involves problem solving or pathways, you add items 1, 4, 6, and 8. And the items 3, 5, 7, and 11, which have nothing to do with hope, are just there. They have, they're about, health and worrying and all sorts of things, but they don't really have anything to do with hope. They're just there. So after you total the two subscales, you add those two up and you get a total hope scale. A score, then you can look at, how do you measure up? So here it says, I think we have a slightly different, it says on the bottom of the slide how scores of 40 to 48 are hopeful. But you can kind of look and see how the scores break down. So it's a neat thing to do, and then you can do it different points in time. Here's a quote by Snyder, who is a key researcher in hope. Hope is a function of struggle. We develop hope not during the easy or comfortable times, but through adversity and discomfort. Unlike optimism, which is simply the expectation of a better future, hope is action-oriented and a skill that can be learned. According to Crocker, hope therapy helps improve satisfaction, resilience, and levels of depression by effectively creating a positive cognitive triad. That is, a positive view of yourself, of the world, and of the future.
So here are some manageable ways that you can cultivate hope in your own life. It includes getting support from friends, loved ones, or a support group. Sometimes taking a break and allowing yourself time to pause can help you find hope again. Helping others can increase your own levels of happiness. Even laughter can increase hope. Some other ways to cultivate hope include working on stress reduction through methods such as mindfulness, meditation, and having a healthy routine. Learning resilience strategies, which include increasing self-regulation, having positive relationships, having positive internal beliefs, and learning to take action. Practicing gratitude by being grateful for what you have. That can help you feel happier and more hopeful. Taking care of yourself can help you show up more fully in your life. And practicing positive affirmations can build hope and give us the confidence to tackle our challenges and to meet our goals.
Okay, here are some positive affirmations that you can practice daily to help build hope and give yourself the confidence to tackle challenges you may face and to meet your goals. And I would like to share a personal habit that I have been doing for probably like maybe 8 years or so. And that is that every single password I have, whether it be for my phone or my work phone or my computer, or, we all have millions and millions of, well, as not millions, but we have a lot of passwords. And every single one of mine is an affirmation. So, you are awesome, number one. Or, uh, you are resilient, or, you are brilliant. Um, because, it's all true. And the more you type those passwords in, the more you internalize those messages, and the more you believe it about yourself. And what you believe, then, even more so becomes true. So, it's a great thing to do, and I would highly recommend it.
So now we're going to share a fun video of Jessica practicing her daily affirmations in front of the mirror. You can be like Jessica and practice your positive affirmations in front of the mirror.
It's guaranteed to work. So, we're going to continue to talk about cultivating hope. There is a wonderful app out there called the Good News Network, and the app is totally free. You could try it on your phone. It's a great way of finding out what good news is happening in the world today. So, an example from the Good News Network is that a new lung cancer drug stops progression in 60% of patients, for example. That's just an example. It's pretty fun. I've enjoyed looking at that app and hearing about good news. Additionally, limit the amount of time you listen to the news or read the news online, especially if there's a topic in the news that's distressing to you. Just try your best to avoid it. Okay, so increasing hope involves doing the work of reframing thoughts and forming new habits. And there's 6 steps to increasing hope. We're going to list them, and then in a minute, we're going to look at each of them more closely. So the first one is break goals into smaller chunks. Stay in community. Prepare to pivot. Celebrate wins. Reflect on the past. Recognize that you're already practicing hope. So the next slide, we'll start looking at the first step. The breaking of goals into smaller chunks. And when you work on a little chunk, success begets success, and your sense of hope about the future increases. Goals should be specific and concrete. Hope is about embracing possibility. It's easier to maintain hope if goals are achievable. And you might even want to make your goals SMART goals. So they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Okay. Step 2 is to stay in community. A community of hopeful people can inspire you by encouraging you in your goals, helping you pivot when you encounter obstacles, or simply reminding you that overcoming difficulty is possible. Seeing other people succeed can be very motivating. So here's step 3, prepare to pivot. When a designated pathway does not lead directly to a goal, stay hopeful by being primed to pivot. Try to see setbacks as new information about which strategies work and which don't work, and then modify your approach and goal so you maintain momentum toward what you are trying to accomplish. Reframing requires creativity, which is another learnable skill. Step 4, reflect on the past. Chan Hellman, who's a key researcher on hope, asked people to be their own hope model by reflecting back on a time they achieved something really difficult in their lives, when they chose to take action and it made all the difference. Step 5, celebrate wins. Counting successes along the journey toward a goal can help energize you to move forward. Honor tiny steps through a mindful gratitude practice. Every little step counts. And then step 6, recognize that you're already practicing hope. Acknowledge that you are a part of a positive change. So we're going to reflect for just a moment on cultivating hope and wondering what is one skill that you would like to practice as you learn to increase your own hope. The things we've talked about so far. Like, what would you say is a difficult skill that was mentioned? Is it breaking goals into smaller chunks? Is it preparing to pivot? Some people do not recognize small wins. Be generous during this process. Give yourself credit for tiny steps forward. So maybe people could unmute and just state, something that you would like to practice, that you learned about just now, or anything you would like to say about this, just reflecting, or in the chat. You can put it in the chat.
Celebrating the small wins, because even those are victories.
Mm-hmm. You bet. You bet. Small wins add up. Yes. Who else? It's nice to hear some of the things I'm not doing very well reading the chat. Can you take over, Melinda?
Yeah. Gift says, it's nice to hear some of the things I already do is a way of practicing hope. Mackenzie says, reflecting on the past successes to help with hope now. Deborah says, I want to get better at celebrating wins too. I often focus on what still needs to be done, not what has already happened.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Very
you all for
good.
sharing.
I'd like
Yeah,
to get
thank
better
you.
at pivoting.
Pivoting.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to get better at pivoting.
You learn something when you pivot. You're learning that, well, that one didn't quite work out. I need to adjust, right?
Mhm.
Somebody
And
else.
yeah, Anne says, pause is something I need to remember and breathe. I seem always focused and in action sometimes too much. Yes, taking the time to pause.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you pause, you realize how far you've come. Sorry, Melinda.
Oh, no worries. Rachel says, when you feel yourself starting to lose hope, be sure to reach out for support and for your hope to be restored. Yes, reaching out to your
Mm-hmm.
community and accepting that help too.
Mm-hmm.
That's great to hear, Anne. Anne says, um, oops, getting to this ACEs seminar is a step in the right direction for me. And Gift says, yes to pivoting. That's something I need to practice better. Sometimes your mind can make you feel like pivoting is a loss as opposed to hopeful.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you all for sharing.
Mhm.
So we are going to share a bit about characteristics of the hopeful. So hopeful individuals exhibit optimism. They have a perception of control over one's life, their life, and they perceive that they have problem-solving skills.
So we're going to talk about an example of hope. And remember that one of the definitions of hope is feeling a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. Here's a simple example of hope. Jacob was an 8-year-old second grader at Horizon Elementary School. Jacob had always been ambitious, reflective, and artistic. The teacher announced that the school was sponsoring an art contest. The topic was create a picture that represents something in this world or in space. Few students entered the contest, but Jacob was very excited to enter and did his very best work. The day arrived when the students gathered in the gym to find out who had won the contest. Jacob sat on the bleachers with his heart swelling with pride. He imagined his name being called. This is hope.
Alrighty, so now we're going to dive a little bit deeper and we're going to go into review some of the research about hope. So first, the Feel Good, Think Positive intervention was designed for children aged 8 to 12 years old. This age group is considered to be a critical period for developing positive psychological skills like optimism and hope, making it an ideal time to introduce such interventions to support their mental well-being. The intervention was implemented into children's regular school schedule over the course of 8 weeks, and it included several activities to help children build a more positive mindset. So the activities focused on 2 main areas. First, optimism, so believing that good things will happen in the future. And second is hope, so believing that they can achieve their goals even if there are challenges. And throughout the duration of the program, children engaged in positive reflection, so reflecting on their strengths, good experiences, and what makes them feel happy. Goal setting, which is where they're taught how to set realistic goals for themselves and how to create a plan to achieve those goals. Gratitude exercises, so thinking about what they're grateful for. Positive affirmations, practicing saying positive things about themselves, and social support, so where they're encouraged to work together and support each other. So the intervention was not just about feeling good in the moment, but about building long-term habits of positive thinking. So researchers found that after participating in the intervention, children experienced increased optimism. So children showed higher levels of optimism, believing more strongly that good things would happen in the future. They experienced higher hope. So children reported feeling more hopeful and confident in their ability to achieve personal goals and face challenges. And they experienced improved mental well-being. The intervention helped enhance children's overall emotional well-being, including increased feelings of self-worth, as well as a more positive view of themselves and their lives. And these benefits were sustained over time, with children maintaining higher optimism and hope even after the program ended. So the findings suggest that teaching children to develop optimism and hope through structured activities can have a positive impact on their emotional and mental well-being. And this could help children better cope with challenges, improve their academic performance, and enhance their social relationships. And this study emphasizes the importance of integrating positive psychology interventions like this into school curricula, as they can offer long-term benefits to children's mental health and overall development. The next study of how hope measures up, hope predicts school variables, belong growth mindset, and school belonging. This study looks at how hope as a psychological trait can influence students' academic engagement, achievement, and well-being. So hope is compared with two other popular psychological constructs in education. Growth mindset, the belief that intelligence and abilities can grow with effort, and then school belonging, which is a student's sense of being accepted, valued, and included in the school environment. So in the study, using a survey-based approach, a diverse sample of 447 adolescent students aged 12 to 19 were assessed on their levels of hope, growth mindset, and school belonging. And then researchers examined the impact of these measures on students' academic outcomes like grades, motivation, and engagement in school. Key findings of the study showed that hope predicts academic outcomes. So hope was a significant predictor of academic engagement, performance, and overall well-being in school, beyond the influence of growth mindset and school belonging. Hope was associated with higher levels of academic persistence and adaptive coping strategies. Hope also contributed uniquely to students' success in school. While growth mindset also predicted academic outcomes, hope provided additional explanatory power, even when accounting for their mindset about learning and intelligence. And there was a significant relationship between hope and school belonging. So students who had higher hope reported feeling more connected to their school environment, leading to better academic outcomes. And the findings in this research study highlight the importance of fostering hope in educational settings. And interventions aimed at increasing hope have the potential to enhance students' academic engagement and outcomes, offering an additional tool beyond growth mindset and school belonging interventions. And lastly, it was also found by Dr. Charles Snyder and colleagues in a study of 3,920 college students that the level of hope among college freshmen at the beginning of the first semester was actually a more accurate predictor of college grades than were SAT scores or grade point averages earned in high school. So aside from hope's beneficial influences in the area of academics, hope has importance in a lot of other areas. Hope is needed in the world because it enables us to endure challenges, dream about possibilities, and strive to make a positive impact. Snyder's theory of hope suggests that people with higher levels of hope may have better psychological well-being, better interpersonal relationships, and are more likely to avoid life crises. Hope can empower you to create and sustain a more positive future in many areas of your life, and it increases self-esteem. And having hope as a strength is most associated with life satisfaction and happiness. There are even health benefits of having hope. So overall, hope can contribute to better health. Hope causes the brain to release neurochemicals called endorphins, which relieve pain and create a general feeling of well-being, and also enkephalins. The main functions of enkephalins include inducing a state of relaxation, so it relaxes, calms, and reduces body activation. It also decreases pain. So pain control is where this shows the greatest impact. Hope also reduces stress and anxiety, increasing resilience and promoting overall well-being. It may boost circulation and respiration due to its stress reduction properties, and improves mental health and can improve symptoms and daily functioning in those with chronic illness. Hope can help people heal from childhood trauma. Tracking emotional intensity and noticing how feelings can fluctuate can increase hope. And then also noticing that even if a difficult emotion such as sadness or anger, even if it doesn't completely dissipate, we'll be reminded that feelings do not last forever. So here we have a quote that says, "It is possible to find hope and meaning even in our darkest hours."
So now we're going to watch a TED Talk with Dr. Chan Hellman. He's a key researcher on hope, and he is from the University of Oklahoma, and I hope you enjoy this.
Very much. Did you know that hope is something that can be measured? Did you know that there is this robust science around hope, and that over 2,000 published studies tell us that hope is one of the single best predictors of well-being across the lifespan? I'm a professor at the University of Oklahoma, and I'm the director of the Hope Research Center. And we spent the last 12 years trying to understand three important questions. Number one, what are the important outcomes associated with increasing hope? We see improvements in physical health. We see improvements in psychological well-being. We see improvements in social well-being. For children, increased hope scores improve their attendance, their grade point average, their graduation rates, and their college-going rates. The second question that we're very interested in is, how does trauma and adversity rob us of our capacity to hope? And then the third question, which is the most important question, is how do we intentionally nurture and restore that hope? Now, I've been studying hope for about 12 years, but for about the last 20 years, I've been involved in areas of domestic violence, child maltreatment, homelessness, food insecurity, and the adversities experienced by our neighbors in our communities. And 12 years ago, I was fortunate enough to meet a young man who changed my life both personally and professionally. David was 19 years old, a young man, and we had a 10-minute conversation that transformed my life. As I'm having this very informal conversation with this young man, what he informs me is that about 3 months earlier, he received news of a devastating disease that he would live with for the rest of his life. More importantly, for the last 2 weeks, he had lived his life homeless and trying to survive day in and day out. And as I was listening to David as a psychologist and as a researcher, I began to listen to those things that must be wrong with him. As he's experiencing these adversities, I began to listen for things like depression, anxiety, and social isolation. But David changed my life that moment when he transitioned the conversation to begin talking about his future. He informed me that he was enrolling at the local community college. He had met with an academic counselor. He had already chosen a major. He knew what the courses were going to be. Instead of being focused on the adversity, he began telling me about his future goals and that plan. And it just struck me in that moment to understand that well-being is more than the reduction of what's wrong with us. And it started this journey for me to try to understand what David shared with me was this concept of hope. But it also transformed the way we began to do research, because the better question is, what is right with you? What is hope? What are some things that word make you think of? Positivity, the future, optimism, faith. These are some of the common words that I hear oftentimes associated with this word hope. Now, let me ask you another question. Do you think that hope is a feeling? Is it an emotion that is within us? Or is hope a way of thinking? And it turns out that hope is a way of thinking. And the reason that is so important is because hope is a way of thinking, it is something that can be taught. Just as sure as we can teach a 4-year-old that 2 + 2 = 4, we can teach hope. So here is our definition. Hope is the belief that your future will be better than today and that you have the power to make it so. Now, this is an important definition, because the first part of that definition, hope is the belief that the future will be better than today, is optimism. Hope goes beyond optimism by saying that you have the power to make it so. Hope is about taking action to pursue that future. Hope is about 3 simple ideas: goals, pathways, and willpower. Goals become the cornerstone of our ability for hope. Each and every one of you, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, you are pursuing goals in your life. The question is whether or not you have the ability to identify the pathways or the roadmaps of how you're going to get there from here. And then the final part of hope is this, I prefer to use the word willpower, which is the mental energy. It is the motivation. It is the perseverance that we have to pursue our pathways, especially in the presence of adversity. Now, hope is very simple: goals, pathways, and willpower. And that is it. That is the complexity of hope. Now, as a professor at the university, I will tell you that we are trained to, why say something in 5 words when I can use 500? The more complex that this concept is, the better it must be. But what I love about the simplicity of hope is that it's accessible. It's accessible to each and every one of us. But we have to understand that both pathways and willpower are required for us to be hopeful. We have to have both the motivation for the goal as well as the pathways on how to get there. We have to have both. So it may be that I'm highly motivated towards a goal, but if I don't know how to get there from here, I would be considered lower in hope. Now, alternatively, it may be that I have those pathways available to me, I'm just not motivated to do that work. Now, one of the things that I'd like for you to think about is when you hear this language of hope, goals, pathways, and willpower, is to take just a moment and reflect on how we use this word hope in our everyday language. How have you used it today, in fact? And so we'll often use it as ways like, I hope you have a great day. I hope you're well. But while I have that great desire for that outcome, I have no control over that. I have no pathways by which to ensure that there are no storms. And in fact, when we think about it in this capacity, that hope requires both pathways and willpower, this is how we distinguish hoping from wishing. When we have a wish, we have a desire for the outcome, but no pathways. When we have a wish, it is passive towards those goals. Hope is about taking action to pursue that future. What I'd like to share with you really briefly is how trauma and adversity influence the goals that we set. And what we've learned is that when children, adults, and families are experiencing adversity, we're more likely to set avoidant goals. We're more likely to set goals of things that we do not want to occur. When we are experiencing higher levels of hope, we're more likely to set achievement-oriented goals. Now, the other thing that we've learned is that in the presence of adversity, we're much better at short-term goal setting than we are long-term goal setting. Now, this becomes very personal for me because during my high school years, I spent much of my time homeless. Now, when I graduated high school, the principal asked several of us to come on stage and to announce to our classmates and the school what our goals were for the future. I began to reflect, oh my gosh, what is the future going to hold? Because I have spent so many years focused on where am I going to eat? Where am I going to sleep? How am I going to stay safe? And I realized that I was losing my safe place in that moment. So I started to reflect real quickly. I'd say I could work on somebody's farm. I could join the military. I could go to college. So the microphone comes to me and I'm standing on stage and I say, I'm going to college. And that sounds just like an achievement goal. But for me, it was an avoidant goal. I went to college to avoid the other options. My first semester grade point average is a 0.56. I want to make sure you heard that, 0.56. I failed every class but advanced swimming and life saving. So it turns out I enjoy swimming. Now, the other thing I would encourage you is that you too can be a professor at the University of Oklahoma. You too. It is possible. But what you have to recognize is that going to class, studying for the exam, getting good grades, achieving a degree was not my goal. I was avoiding the other options. And what we know is that the nature of our goals influence the way we think about how to get there. We also have learned that This is especially true with children, that when they experience trauma and adversity, they become very stressed around pathways thinking. The idea of coming up with the pathways of how to pursue those goals become very difficult for them. The ability to solve problems, to overcome barriers, become very difficult. So trauma tends to rob us of our problem-solving capability. The other thing that we've learned is that our willpower, our mental energy, is driven by fear and rumination. It drains us of that willpower, of that motivation. Now, two things that I would like to highlight about willpower. First and foremost is that it is a limited resource that we have in our bodies. That is, every day we are depleting that willpower. And what happens when our willpower is depleted is we begin to lose the capacity for self-regulation, to regulate our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors. We're more likely to be explosive in our emotions. We're more likely to be impulsive. The other thing and the final thing about that is because willpower is a finite resource, willpower is associated with the glucose in our system. Because glucose for us is energy. And as that energy is depleted, so too is our willpower. This highlights the critical nature of nutrition programs in our communities if we're going to continue to restore hope. Now, I'd like for us all to experience hope, goals, pathways, and willpower. And just a simple, quick little hypothetical exercise. Let's just go ahead and say that the goal, the desired outcome, is we want to drive. Say in this hypothetical example that the only pathway that we have available to us is a manual transmission or stick shift car. So just for those of you who know how to drive a stick shift car, what I want you to do is remember that very first experience. For those of you who have never had that experience, what I'd like for you to do is, and in fact, all of us, what I would like for us to do is to engage in a very simple, quick exercise. What I'd like for you to do is just close your eyes for just a moment and see if you can imagine yourself facing a car or looking at this car that is a manual transmission vehicle. Can you put that in your mind? Can you imagine that vehicle? Moreover, can you imagine yourself sitting in the driver's seat of this car? Can you see the gearbox beside you and the pedals that you're going to have to navigate? And then finally, can you imagine yourself attempting to drive this vehicle? And this is a critical core component when we begin to nurture and restore hope. Imagination is the instrument of hope. We have to be able to imagine ourselves in that future context. Unfortunately, we have a little bit of adversity. Let's imagine in this hypothetical scenario that we are parked uphill. Now, one more piece of adversity. Let's go ahead and say there's a brand new BMW parked immediately behind us, right? Brand new BMW parked immediately behind us. So we're going to have to navigate this. Now, those of you who are laughing, obviously you've had this experience before. And what I want you to do is just remember that anxiety, that excitement that you had. For me, it always makes my palms sweat when I think about that first experience. So we've got the car started. We, as in you, have the car started. We've got the clutch depressed. We're in first gear. Now, as you're slowly starting to let that clutch out in that moment with the BMW immediately behind us going uphill, as you're letting that clutch out, what is your goal in that moment? And most often what I hear is, don't hit the BMW behind me. Don't stall the engine. And what I want to highlight is that that's an avoidant goal. When we're all experiencing a stressful situation, we naturally will gravitate towards these avoidant goals. So let's say in this scenario, we let the clutch out, we don't hit the BMW, but we immediately kill the car. It just lurches and dies immediately. What is it that immediately goes through our mind as we've had this failed attempt? What are we telling ourselves about our ability to drive this car? And most often it is filled with the I can'ts. I will never be able to do this. But for those of you who know how to drive a stick shift car, let me ask you a question. Why didn't you quit? And the answer is because we desired the goal. And this is what we've learned. The more we desire the outcome, the more we're going to face adversity to try to overcome it. And that becomes a very important component in nurturing hope, is that the goal has to be desired. So let's say that you start the car back up, you let the clutch out, and now we lurch forward. We're actually driving. We have a successful attempt. We're going uphill with this. It could have been luck, but we're moving. So because practice makes perfect, we're going to pull over, turn the car off, and we're going to try it again. So you start the car up, you're still in first gear. As you let that clutch out, you immediately stall the engine one more time. But what are you saying to yourself now in your mind? And what we're saying is, well, I've done this before, I can do this again. And this is an important aspect of nurturing hope. Hope begets hope. That one opportunity for success showed us the future is possible. So we're starting to transition from the I can't to the I can. If I can drive in my neighborhood, I can drive in the city. If I can drive in the city, I can drive on the freeway. My point is that every new situation produces anxiety, this new scenario. But I know how to drive a stick shift car, so the future is possible. That's the hope begets hope part. Now, this is the pathways component. My question for you is, how well can you manage your willpower? How much of your attention, how much of your mental energy is required the first time you let the clutch out on that car? And the answer is all of it. We have to be able to dedicate all of that mental energy towards that process. How much of it, of your mental energy, is required today when you drive? And the answer is not very much, right? We don't have to pay very much attention to that process because it's become habitual. But if I'm living in adversity and stress and I'm experiencing trauma, where day in and day out, I'm wondering, where am I going to eat? How am I going to stay safe? Where am I going to live? How do I get my children's medication? All of those things are draining that willpower as individuals are trying to learn new pathways. So this is the interplay between goals, pathways, and willpower. And three important ideas were presented in this. First and foremost, imagination is the instrument of hope. That is critical. The second idea was that these goals have to be desirable. And when we're working with children, adults, and families, we have to recognize it's their goal, not our goal for them. They have to desire that goal. And then the third important point is the hope begets hope piece. But there's one more component that I want to share with you that I think is the most important takeaway with how to nurture hope. Now, as I mentioned, during my childhood, during my high school years, I was experiencing quite a bit of adversity in my life, transitioning into homelessness and other things that are associated with that. And I was really experiencing a tremendous amount of despair. It was really a dark time in my life, and to the point where I began to think about strategies to escape the pain. I set a plan. I had a date. And as I'm engaging in this sort of dark period of my life, one of my teachers, one of my middle school teachers, began to recognize my struggle. And he came up one day and he sat down beside me. And he sat down beside me for about 3 to 5 minutes. And he didn't say anything for the longest time. In fact, he just leaned into me. And then after a period of time, as he starts to get up, he looks over and he says, "Chan, you're going to be okay." And as that plan, as that date for me approached and I began to think about my strategies, this teacher kept coming back in my life. And what that teacher taught me is a critical aspect of nurturing hope, and that is hope is a social gift. Hope is not something that happens in isolation within us. It happens in relationships with each other. Our connectedness with each other is one of the single best predictors of hope. Our connectedness with others, our connectedness with something greater than ourselves. Hope is a social gift. At the heart of change is our ability to understand the way things are right now in our lives. For me, I understood the despair and the angst that I was experiencing, but because of that important teacher in my life, I began to imagine the way things could be. And so for me, that is when hope is born. And we should learn to be a little more intentional in our social connections.
I love that TED Talk. He's the best. He's great. So just to kind of reiterate some of the things that Chan said, about how to nurture hope, that imagination is key. You have to be able to imagine something different than what is right now. And the goal that you have really has to be something that you really want, that you're going to really work hard for. And then there's the, being successful creates more hope, and hope begets hope. And then the last one is that hope is a social gift. And we'll look at the next slide. It's not something, he said, not something that happens in isolation within us. It happens in relationships with others and in our connectedness with something greater than ourselves. And our connectedness with each other is the single best predictor of hope. He talks about being more intentional about our social connections, and just realize the power that is there as humans, that we can really get magic kind of happens because the fact that we're human and what we all mean to each other. And he said, at the heart of change is our ability to understand the way things are right now in our lives, and that we can begin to imagine the way things could be. And that is where hope is born. So again, it's time to do a little bit of reflecting. Just wondering, what is a takeaway for you from this presentation? Maybe something that resonated with you. And here's a quote: never forget all the times you pushed, even when you felt you couldn't. All the mornings you got out of bed, no matter how hard it was. All the times you wanted to give up, but didn't. Never forget how much strength you've gained along the way. So now I would invite you to unmute and speak up and share with the group a reflection, or you can type it in the chat.
I would just like to say, for me, it's like working a muscle. You got to practice it and exercise it. And if you don't, it's one of those things, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so for me, it's like, oh yeah, you gotta practice that and just, keep trying with it, because it's like your daily medicine. You have to take it, right? You have to keep going at it and trying and implementing these techniques that we were talking about, whether it's finding the joy and gratitude and daily affirmations. All these little things can add up and help us build our resilience and our self-recovery and whatever that may be. And so I have to remember to tell myself, I have to take my medicine. I have to practice this. This is a muscle. I have to keep going, because if I don't, I'm going to forget. And go down the wrong path or something. So I really enjoyed this. I thought that TED Talk was just so incredible. I had never heard about that or seen it before.
Mhm. Mhm. Lots of comments in the chat. Melinda, do you
Yeah.
want to?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Jessica, for sharing. That's a great analogy too. Susan said, learned about the feel good, think positive group work that I can do with my clients at the schools where I am an embedded therapist, just ending groups on restorative circles. So this fits right in. Anne said, I want to share the little girl in front of the mirror, how natural it seems to be so unabashedly positive in ourselves and others. Deborah says, working in a school, this presentation has made me want to do more to make sure every student here feels like they belong and are an important part of our school community. That is awesome.
Mhm.
Thank you all for sharing.
Mhm.
So we have some quotes as we wrap up. First is, in all things, it's better to hope than to despair. Next one is, nothing's forever in this world, and that's why we have every reason to be hopeful. Another one is, even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise. Another one is, let your hopes, not your hurts, shape your future.
We struggle with fear. We strive to embrace hope. Where there is hope, there's life. It fills us with fresh courage and makes us strong again.
And then real quick, Gretchen had commented, I have had a large amount of stress based on the substance use of family members. I facilitate a family and friends support group through Smart Recovery. I will use these ideas in the future and tonight in our meeting. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm. We're glad. I think hope is an incredible topic. It's a powerful thing when you realize that it's you have you have the power to make it so that the future can be better, and you have the power to make that happen. But love to hear from more of you. Or if you have any questions, please let us hear it.
Jessica commented, this was such a great topic. I had no idea there was a measurable data for hope. What an incredible resource and tool. Yes.
Mm.
If there are no questions, we want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. We do have a survey that is in the chat. If you could take a moment to take it, we'd greatly appreciate it, your feedback. And then just a couple more comments. I see Anne, she said, I want to help people grow strength. Mackenzie said, I agree with everyone above. What a great thought process behind it. Makes me want to start many programs. I'm glad to hear that this was an inspiring presentation to you all.
Yeah. It's nice to know also how we can help children who have had adversity to restore their hope. So
Thank you,
thank
Catherine.
you. Mhm.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Anne. I'll have a nice evening. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.